And every time you look at yourself, be you black, brown, red, or yellow, a so-called Negro, you represent a person who poses such a serious problem for America because you're not wanted. Once you face this as a fact, then you can start plotting a course that will make you appear intelligent instead of unintelligent. What you and I need to do is learn to forget our differences. When we come together, we don't come together as Baptists or Methodists. You don't catch hell because you're a Baptist, and you don't catch hell because you're a Methodist. You don't catch hell because you're a Methodist or a Baptist. You don't catch hell because you're a Democrat or a Republican. You don't catch hell because you're a Mason or an Elk. And you sure don't catch hell because you're an American, because if you was an American, you wouldn't catch no hell. You catch hell because you're a black man. You catch hell, all of us catch hell for the same reason.
America has always had a problem it refuses to name. Not poverty, not crime, not division. Its real problem is the people it tried to enslave and then silence. Malcolm X saw that clearly, and in one of his most uncompromising and inspiring speeches, he tore apart the myths America hides behind. He exposed how the system teaches obedience, how it rewards token leaders, and how it fears real revolution when it rises from the streets. In this video, we revisit Malcolm X's unfiltered message, breaking down the history that America tried to erase and why they matter now more than ever.
So we are all black people, so-called Negro, second-class citizens, ex-slaves. You are nothing but an ex-slave. You don't like to be told that. But what else are you? You are ex-slave. You didn't come here on the Mayflower. You came here in a slave ship, in chains, like a horse or a cow or a chicken. And you were brought here by the people who came here on the Mayflower. You were brought here by the so-called pilgrims or founding fathers. They were the ones who brought you here. We have a common enemy. We have this in common. We have a common oppressor, a common exploiter, and a common discriminator. So once we all realize that we have this common enemy, then we unite on the basis of what we have in common. And what we have foremost in common is that enemy, the white man. He's an enemy to all of us. I know some of you all think that some of them aren't enemies. Time will tell.
Malcolm X does not waste time on comfort here. He begins by telling his audience exactly what America has made of them. So-called Negro, second-class citizens, ex-slaves. It is not an insult, it is an unflinching reality. Nearly 100 years after emancipation, Black Americans were still locked into a structure that treated them as if nothing fundamental had changed. They could serve in the military, work, pay taxes, and still be treated as intruders in the only country they had ever known. The phrase, ex-slave, lands like a challenge. It forces the crowd to see that freedom without power is just a different form of captivity, dressed in new language. When he contrasts the Mayflower with the slave ship, the meaning is clear. One group of people arrived in search of opportunity. The other was chained and delivered as property. The so-called pilgrims and founding fathers built their wealth and their laws on that contradiction. Malcolm's point is that the American story is not a shared journey of pioneers. It is a divided history. One side holding power, the other side denied humanity. By repeating ex-slave, he forces the audience to remember that progress measured only by proximity to whiteness is not progress at all. From there, Malcolm introduces what he calls the common enemy. He names it directly: a common oppressor, a common exploiter, a common discriminator. He strips away distractions and reduces it to its core. Different states, different churches, different party affiliations do not change the pattern. The same hands control schools, jobs, courts, housing. The same system profits from black labor while denying black dignity. Unity, he argues, can only be built by recognizing this shared reality. Without a clear view of who and what is being resisted, every division within the community becomes a tool used against them. The choice of words matters. Oppressor, exploiter, discriminator. These are not vague labels. They describe roles in a cycle that repeats itself generation after generation. Oppression holds people down through violence or law. Exploitation extracts value while they are held down. Discrimination provides the excuses to justify it all. As long as those three forces are left intact, the outcome will be the same. Malcolm speaks with urgency because he knows that any movement that ignores this will remain stuck, changing surface details but never shifting power. The close of this passage points to time as the ultimate witness. Some of you think that some of them aren't enemies. Time will tell. It is a call to pay attention not to promises but to outcomes. Watch who gets hired first and fired last. Watch who receives justice in the courts and who is left waiting. Watch who is welcomed into neighborhoods and who is pushed out. Time exposes loyalty more clearly than words, and America's record of treatment toward Black people speaks for itself. This part of the speech is the pivot from politeness to clarity. It shows the crowd that naming the problem is not negativity, it is strategy. Without a diagnosis, there is no cure. Without acknowledging the depth of the wound, there is no healing. Malcolm's insistence on calling things what they are, ex-slave, enemy, oppressor, is not for drama. It is for focus. He wanted his people to stop being distracted by titles, positions, or labels, and instead recognize that the structure they were caught in was designed to keep them in place. Only by facing that truth could they begin to chart a real course forward.
You bleed when the white man says bleed. You bite when the white man says bite. And you bark when the white man says bark. I hate to say this about us, but it's true. How you gonna be nonviolent in Mississippi as violent as you were in Korea? How can you justify being nonviolent in Mississippi and Alabama when your churches are being bombed and your little girls are being murdered, and at the same time you're gonna get violent with Hitler and Tojo and somebody else that you don't even know? If violence is wrong in America, violence is wrong abroad. If it's wrong to be violent, defending black women and black children and black babies and black men, then it's wrong for America to draft us and make us violent abroad in defense of her.
Malcolm X slices straight into the contradiction at the heart of American politics. He points out that Black men were sent to fight in Korea, in Germany, in the Pacific, and they bled on command. They bled without hesitation because the government ordered it, because the white man said bleed. Yet when the fight was for their own neighborhoods, their own daughters, their own churches, suddenly nonviolence was demanded. The contradiction is brutal. A nation that glorifies violence abroad demands silence and passivity at home, and Malcolm refuses to let that double standard hide behind moral language. You bleed when the white man says bleed, you bite when the white man says bite, and you bark when the white man says bark. With those lines, Malcolm strips away the illusion of independence. He wants us to confront the reality of control. It is not discipline or morality being praised when Black communities are told to stay nonviolent. It is obedience. The system is not asking for peace. It is demanding submission. And that, for Malcolm, is the heart of the betrayal. Then he raises the most uncomfortable question of all. How can you justify being nonviolent in Mississippi or Alabama when the very institutions you built, your churches, your schools, are bombed when children are murdered? Why is it righteous to pick up arms against foreign leaders like Hitler or Tojo, yet shameful to fight back when your own children are burned alive in Birmingham? These questions were not hypothetical. Just weeks before this speech, the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham had been bombed, killing 4 young black girls. The nation expressed sympathy, but the same nation expected the community to respond with patience and prayer instead of fire and defense. Malcolm forces his listeners to see that hypocrisy. What he is attacking here is not the idea of peace, but the misuse of it. Nonviolence, as preached by the dominant culture, was never about moral consistency. It was about containment. If violence is wrong, it should be wrong everywhere. If it is justified abroad, it must also be justified when people are under attack at home. America cannot demand sacrifice in foreign wars and deny self-defense on its own streets. To accept that imbalance, Malcolm argues, is to accept permanent subordination. It begs the questions: when has America ever won freedom through waiting? When has any revolution in history been achieved by silence? From 1776 onward, American history is celebrated for its bloodshed. Yet black people are shamed for even considering the same path. The message is unmistakable. The rules shift depending on who is fighting and whose freedom is at stake. Malcolm's clarity here is not a call to recklessness. It is a demand for consistency. If the country claims to believe in defense, then defending black life should be as sacred as defending white power abroad. If the nation honors courage, then courage at home should not be vilified. His words remind us that dignity cannot be granted by an enemy who profits from obedience. It must be claimed, even if claiming it comes at a cost. By framing the hypocrisy so plainly, Malcolm X exposes the lie at the foundation of American nonviolence. It was never universal. It was selective. And as long as it remained selective, it was just another tool of control. His challenge to the crowd was simple: stop accepting standards that are designed to keep you defenseless.
To understand this, you have to go back to what young brother here referred to as the house nigger and the field nigger back during slavery. There was 2 kinds of slaves. There was the house nigger and the field nigger. The house nigger, they lived in the house with master. They dressed pretty good. They ate good because they ate his food, what he left. They lived in the attic or the basement, but still they lived near their master. And they loved their master more than the master loved himself. They would give their life to save their master's house quicker than the master would. The house nigger, the master said, "We got a good house here." The house nigger said, "Yeah, we got a good house here." Whenever the master said we, he said we. That's how you can tell a house nigger. If the master's house caught on fire, the house nigger would fight harder to put the blaze out than the master would. If the master got sick, the house nigger would say, "What's the matter, boss?" "We sick, we sick." He identified himself with his master more than his master identified with himself. And if you came to the house nigger and said, "Let's run away, let's escape, let's separate," that house nigger would look at you and say, "Man, you crazy. What you mean separate? Where is there a better house than this? Where can I wear better clothes than this? Where can I eat better food than this?" That was that house nigger. In those days, he was called a house nigger. And that's what we call him today, because we still got some house niggers running around here.
Malcolm X tells the story of the house nigger and the field nigger, not just as a history lesson, but as a mirror for the present. During slavery, there really were divisions in labor. Some enslaved people worked inside the master's home, cooking, cleaning, caring for children. Others toiled in the fields, planting, harvesting, and working from sunup to sundown. Those in the house often wore better clothing and ate leftover scraps, while field laborers endured brutal, exhausting work. Life was harsh everywhere, but proximity to the master sometimes created a difference in treatment. Malcolm takes this historical divide and sharpens it into metaphor. The house nigger, he says, lived close enough to the master to absorb his values and tie his identity to the master's fate. "We got a good house here," the house nigger would say, repeating the master's words as if they were his own. If the house caught fire, he would fight to save it. If the master fell ill, he would declare, "We sick," identifying so deeply with the oppressor that he erased himself. For Malcolm, this was not just history. It was a description of a mindset that still existed in his time. People who would rather protect the master's comfort than pursue their own liberation. The point is not that every house slave literally thought this way. Historians remind us that enslaved people in the house also suffered, often under constant surveillance, harassment, and abuse. Many resisted in their own ways. Malcolm knew this. His purpose was rhetorical. He used the house Negro as a symbol of loyalty to oppression, a way to expose how systems create defenders among the oppressed by offering a taste of privilege or status. Then comes the test he offers. If someone said, "Let's run, let's escape, let's separate," the field Negro would leap at the chance. The house Negro, by contrast, would call you crazy. Where is there a better house than this? Where can I wear better clothes than this? Where can I eat better food than this? In this metaphor, comfort becomes a chain as powerful as shackles. The more invested someone is in preserving the master's house, the less willing they are to imagine life beyond it. By using the raw language of the plantation, Malcolm collapses time. He shocks his audience by calling out the modern version. Black leaders, celebrities, or neighbors who align themselves so closely with white institutions that they defend them more fiercely than they defend their own people. These, he says, are the house Negroes of the 20th century. The metaphor stings because it forces recognition. What makes this passage powerful is how it reframes loyalty. The real betrayal, Malcolm suggests, is not in rejecting America's systems, but in defending them while your own community suffers. By identifying too closely with the master, you lose sight of yourself. The story of the house Negro is less about slavery itself than about the survival of a mindset, one that still appeared in politics, media, and even the church. By telling this story, Malcolm offers us a choice. Will you be satisfied with proximity to power, content with scraps from the table, or will you recognize the trap and step into the role of resistance? It is a challenge, not a history lesson. The house Negro story resonates because it transforms a painful part of the past into a call for clarity in the present.
An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, and a head for a head, and a life for a life. That's a good religion. And then anybody, no one resents that kind of religion being taught but a wolf who intends to make you his meal. This is the way it is with the white man in America. He's a wolf, and you a sheep. Anytime a shepherd, a pastor, teach you and me not to run from the white man, and at the same time teach us don't fight the white man, he's a traitor to you and me. Don't lay down our life all by itself. No. Preserve your life. It's the best thing you got. And if you got to give it up, let it be even Stephen. The slave master took Tom and dressed him well and fed him well and even gave him a little education. Gave him a long coat and a top hat and made all the other slaves look up to him. Then he used Tom to control them. The same strategy that was used in those days is used today by the same white man.
Malcolm X begins here by reaching back into one of the oldest codes of justice. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a head for a head, and a life for a life. For him, this is not rhetoric. It is a reminder that every civilization, every scripture, and every society that claims moral authority has recognized reciprocity as the foundation of justice. If harm is done, accountability must follow. To Malcolm, this is the plain truth that black people in America had been systematically denied. They were expected to endure violence without retaliation, oppression without resistance, and humiliation without response. That, he insists, is not religion. It is manipulation. He goes further by identifying the predator-prey dynamic at work. The white man in America is a wolf, and you are the sheep. This metaphor strikes hard because it strips away any illusions of equality under the law. A wolf does not negotiate with sheep. A wolf devours them. And when religious leaders teach sheep not to run and not to fight, Malcolm says they are not protectors, they are traitors. The shepherd who demands passivity in the face of a predator is not saving lives. He is delivering them. The charge is aimed not only at white institutions, but at black clergy who encouraged patience and nonviolence while their communities were under siege. Malcolm exposes this as a collaboration, intentional or not, that leaves the people vulnerable. Preserve your life. It's the best thing you've got. Malcolm reminds his audience that self-defense is not recklessness, it is preservation. To give your life without resistance is waste. To give it fighting for dignity is balance, even Stephen. This framing flips the moral script. Instead of martyrdom through passivity, he presents honor through resistance. He is not calling for chaos. He is insisting on the same right to survive that every other group in history has claimed. The second half of this passage shifts into an attack on symbolic leadership. Malcolm recalls how slave masters elevated certain enslaved people, dressing them in finer clothes, feeding them better scraps, even giving them a bit of education. These house slaves were then used to control the larger population. By making one man an example, the master turned him into a buffer between the oppressed and the oppressor. This strategy, Malcolm argues, never disappeared. It simply evolved. Instead of long coats and top hats, modern America provided celebrity status, small platforms, or political positions. A handful of black leaders were elevated, publicized, and praised, not to dismantle the system, but to keep the majority contained within it. This point cuts to the heart of his broader critique. Tokenism. Malcolm is warning his listeners not to confuse individual advancement with collective liberation. The slave master's trick was always the same. Give one person a taste of privilege, and he becomes the tool used to pacify the rest. The same method, Malcolm says, was still being applied in his day through carefully selected spokespeople who were granted access to white institutions in exchange for calming the masses. For him, this was not progress. It was a recycled strategy of control. Placed together, these two parts of the speech form a devastating message. First, that survival requires the courage to resist rather than submit. Second, that enemies sometimes wear familiar faces, especially when power props them up to speak for the community. The crowd listening to Malcolm would have recognized these dynamics in their own neighborhoods. Leaders who counseled patience while families suffered. Politicians who celebrated symbolic victories while systemic change remained out of reach. He wanted them to see that this was not accidental. It was the same plantation logic repackaged for the 20th century. The clarity of Malcolm's language is what makes it timeless. By invoking the wolf and the sheep, the eye for an eye, the house slave in a top hat, he collapses centuries of history into images that anyone can understand. These are not abstract theories. They are lived experiences, reinterpreted so that the community could recognize the patterns repeating around them. His warning was simple: stop mistaking symbols for substance, stop confusing patience for peace, and stop allowing predators to convince you that surrender is salvation.
In Danville, Virginia, and other parts of the country, local leaders begin to stir up our people at the grassroots level. This was never done by these Negroes whom you recognize of national stature. They controlled you, but they never incited you or excited you. They controlled you, they contained you. They kept you on the plantation. As soon as King failed in Birmingham, Negro took to the streets. King got out and went out to California to a big rally and raised about, I don't know how many thousands of dollars. Come to Detroit and had a march and raised some more thousands of dollars. And recall, right after that, Wilkins attacked King, accused King and the Corps of starting trouble everywhere and then making the NAACP get him out of jail and spend a lot of money, and then he accused King and Corps of raising all the money and not paying it back. This happened. I got it in documented evidence in the newspaper. Roy started attacking King, and King started attacking Roy, and Farmer started attacking both of them. And as these Negro national stature begin to attack each other, they begin to lose their control of the Negro masses. And Negro was out there in the streets. They was talking about, we're going to march on Washington. By the way, and right at that time, Birmingham had exploded, and the Negroes in Birmingham, remember, they also exploded. They began to stab the crackers in the back and bust them upside the head. Yes, they did. That's when Kennedy sent in the troops down in Birmingham. So, and right after that, Kennedy got on the television and said, this is a moral issue. That's when he said he's going to put out a civil rights bill. And when he mentioned civil rights bill and the Southern crackers started talking about they were going to boycott it or filibuster it, then the Negroes started talking about what? We're going to march on Washington, march on the Senate, march on the White House, march on the Congress, and tie it up, bring it to a halt. Don't let the government proceed. They even said they was going to go out to the airport and lay down on the runway and don't let no airplanes land. I'm telling you what they said. That was revolution. That was revolution. That was the black revolution. It was the grassroots out there in the street. Scared the white man to death. Scared the white power structure in Washington, D.C. to death. I was there. When they found out that this black steamroller was going to come down on the Capitol, they called in Wilkins. They called in Randolph. They called in these national Negro leaders that you respect and told them, call it off. Kennedy said, look, y'all letting this thing go too far. And old Tom said, boss, I can't stop it because I didn't start it.
This is where Malcolm X zeroes in on the contrast between local movements and national leadership. He reminds us that the spark for real change came not from figures of national stature, but from grassroots leaders. In places like Cambridge, Maryland, and Danville, Virginia, everyday organizers stirred people into action. These were not household names. They did not hold high positions or speak from polished stages, but they incited, they energized, and they brought the fight directly to the streets. That, Malcolm says, was something the so-called national leaders never did. Their role was to contain, to control, to keep the masses managed within acceptable boundaries. He points to Birmingham as the turning point. When Martin Luther King Jr. failed to achieve meaningful desegregation there, the movement seemed to stall. But instead of retreat, ordinary black people filled the gap. They took to the streets. They confronted the system head-on. King, meanwhile, traveled west to raise money at rallies in California and Detroit. Soon after, infighting broke out among the recognized leaders. Roy Wilkins attacked King, accusing him and Core of stirring trouble, only for the NAACP to clean up after them. King pushed back. James Farmer clashed with both. The internal battles weakened their authority, and as their control slipped, the masses began to chart their own course. The tension Malcolm describes is not about personalities, it is about strategy. While national leaders argued, black communities were exploding in anger. Birmingham was not only in protest, it was in open confrontation. According to Malcolm, people there stabbed the crackers in the back and bust them upside the head. The federal government responded by sending in troops. President Kennedy himself went on television, declaring the civil rights struggle a moral issue. He promised a civil rights bill, but that promise provoked fierce resistance from Southern politicians, threatening filibuster. In response, black communities began calling for direct pressure. March on Washington, march on the White House, march on Congress, shut down airports, grind the system to a halt. This, Malcolm insists, was the sound of revolution. He describes the fear it produced in Washington. The white power structure, as he calls it, was scared to death. The prospect of an unstoppable grassroots movement storming the Capitol forced the government to act. And here is where Malcolm's analysis bites the hardest. Faced with this rising steamroller, the administration did not address the grievances directly. Instead, they turned back to the very national leaders who had lost touch with the masses. Kennedy summoned men like Wilkins and Randolph, the same ones the grassroots no longer followed, and told them, call it off. But those leaders admitted they had not started it and could not stop it. The people were moving on their own. That admission reveals the central truth Malcolm wanted us to see. Real momentum never came from the carefully staged negotiations or the high-profile rallies funded by white liberals. It came from ordinary people, unpolished, unapproved, and unwilling to wait. When the establishment realized it could not contain that energy, it turned to co-optation. The national leaders who had been losing influence were suddenly brought back into the fold, given money, platforms, and authority to redirect the movement. This is a warning about how power responds to revolt. When pressure builds from the bottom, the system does not immediately yield. It first tries to redirect, to dilute, to manage through familiar faces. Malcolm's retelling of these events is not only a history lesson, it is a blueprint for how movements are neutralized. His message to the crowd is clear: never confuse leadership installed from above with liberation rising from below. Thank you for watching this breakdown of Malcolm X's message. His words still matter because the struggle he named hasn't ended. If you found this powerful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget, this is Black Culture Unlocked, bringing hidden truths and history to light. Subscribe now so you never miss what comes next.